It's the night of 3 June 1944 on a windy rise above Dover, England. The Channel is a black sheet beyond the cliffs, and in the fields behind the hedgerows there are no tanks. No guns, no trucks. In 48 hours, there has to be a whole army here. Captain David Collins knows there will be no second attempt. The real invasion convoys are already loading in distant ports. If the Germans don't believe the army in Dover is real, if the lie does and hold them, their best divisions will rush to the true beaches and smash the landings in Normandy. There's no way to turn that tide back. He pulls his collar up against the damp cold and looks over the pale shapes on the ground. Rolled bundles of rubber and canvas lie in rows like body bags. Each one is a Sherman tank that doesn't exist, a field gun that will never fire, a truck that will never stall in the mud. Lights out in 30, pumps ready, he says quietly. Men move like shadows between the bundles. They are not standard infantry. Many of them still carry the posture of another life. Illustrators, set designers, sound engineers, ad men. Now they belong to the 20, 3rd Headquarters Special Troops Ghost Arm. And they've been told to conjure an entire army group out of air and noise. Behind them, a generator coughs to life, air compressors thump, hoses snake out across the grass. The army is about to inflate. Far to the south, across that same black channel, another man sits over a different map. Oberstleutnant Franz Köhler leans on his elbows in a low room at 15th Army Headquarters in northern France, near Lille. The overhead light buzzes softly, washing the map of the Channel coast in a tired yellow. Thin red lines mark defensive sectors along the French shore. Blue arrows, Allied arrows cut from cardboard and pinned where the German staff thinks the enemy will come. His eyes keep drifting back to one area, past Calais, the narrowest point between England and France. The logic is simple: shortest distance, best ports, direct route to the Rue, and tonight, intelligence seems to agree. Wireless intercepts from the English southeast show heavy traffic. A thick cluster of call signs, unit nets, logistics chatter an entire American army, if you trust the reports, sitting opposite Calais. Köhler taps a finger on Dover on the brightish side of the Channel. If they come here, he mutters. But he also knows what he can't see. German coastal radar, Freya and Erzberg sets strung along the Channel can only peer so far over the curve of the earth. Beyond about 200 kilometers, ships vanish under the radar horizon. Fighters no longer roam freely over England. The RAF and Allied anti-aircraft guns have made deep reconnaissance flights almost impossible. Human agents in Britain are all but gone. The Buey's network has been rolled up. What little comes out of England now comes through double agents, and Berlin swears they are loyal. So, Köhler's picture of the enemy rests on ghosts in the ether. Radio patterns, traffic analysis, the dots and dashes that hint at whole divisions. And lately all those ghosts seem to gather around Dover. He circles the area on his map in soft pencil, feeling the decision tighten like a noose. If he's wrong, 15th Army will be staring at a phantom while the real blow falls somewhere else. On the ridge above Dover, the first tank rises. Collins stands with his hands in his pockets as the deflated mass ripples and swells under the pressure of air. 4 men in coveralls guide it, snapping stays into place. What looks like a collapsed beast slowly takes shape. The blunt nose of a Sherman, the curve of the turret, the barrel pointing toward a darkness that will never hold a German. In 10 minutes, the field has company, another tank, then another. Each one light enough for a few men to lift and carry. Each one, seen from the air or from a distance, indistinguishable from the real thing. Remember, Collins says to the sergeant beside him, no straight lines, scatter them, tire tracks in the right places, and for God's sake, no one puts a tank in a hedgerow. The sergeant grins faintly. Yes, sir, make it ugly. Ugly is realistic. They've learned that the hard way. This isn't just about shape, it's about the story the landscape tells. Rutted roads, maintenance areas, fuel dumps, mess tents. The 23rd can't just inflate tanks. They have to inflate an entire life around them. Down the slope, trucks once roll in at low speed, headlights dim to slits. They carry the other half of the illusion, sound equipment. In a few hours, speakers the size of footlockers will line the imaginary tank parks and motor pools. From them, on carefully looped tracks, will come the clatter of engines, the grind of gears, shouted orders, the hiss of brakes. Sound projected out across the night, fading with distance, fooling any listener into thinking an armored division is there, restless and alive. The order from higher up has been blunt. Make Dover look like the headquarters of a massive Allied formation. First U. Army Group, FUSAG poised to cross to past, Calais. In truth, FUSAG barely exists on paper. Tonight, Collins and his people will make it solid enough for German eyes. Inside 15th Army, a signals officer lays a transparent plastic sheet over Kleur's map. Thin inked lines show estimated ranges of German radar along the French coast. The arcs fall mostly short of the English shore. Herr Oberstleutnant, there was a Freya plot earlier this evening. The officer says, short-lived south of Dover, it may have been a training flight. We lost it under jamming. Kleur frowns. Allied jamming over the channel again. The British and Americans have been steadily growing stronger in the air. Recent reconnaissance flights barely make it off the French coast before being driven back. We can't see their ports. We can't see their harbors, he says. So we listen. He gestures at the folder beside the map. Signals intelligence. The earlier summary from the German listening service, Dienst. Heavy American radio traffic in the Dover area. Logistics nets referring to artillery regiments, engineers. Air support, repeated mention of FUSAG. He taps that acronym with his finger. Heeresgruppe, he says. An army group in Dover. The signals officer nods. We also have reports from agents in Spain and Sweden. London and Washington have been dropping hints in the diplomatic traffic about heavy American formations in Kent. And of course, he hesitates. And of course, Kleur says for him, the Fuhrer has long believed that Calais is the logical invasion point. There it is, the constraint no one can write on the map. If Hitler believes the main blow will fall at Past, Calais, then every report that points there is welcomed, amplified, believe. Anything that points elsewhere has to fight uphill. Kleur looks again at Normandy on his chart. The beaches there are poor compared to Calais. Longer crossing, worse ports, cliffs and buckage inland. Could they come there? He asks quietly. The signals officer shrugs. 7th Army thinks so. They are strengthening their defenses. But our intercepts are main pictures here, Herr Oberstleutnant. He taps Dover, then draws a line to Calais. Everything points to this axis. Everything that reaches them anyway. On the English side, in a dim hut lined with radios, a different picture is being made on key press at a time. Sergeant Paul Red Harris sits with headphones on, a cigarette burning down between two fingers, eyes flicking over a notepad. His left hand works a Morse key in smooth, practiced rhythms. He is, tonight, the voice of a regiment that does not exist. Net control, this is able to. Request ammo resupply grid Baker. 7, he taps out. Negative on rest. Orders to move at 600. Across the hut, another operator answers with a different call sign and a slightly different fist. The unique rhythm and timing that identifies an experienced wireless man. Between them and several more operators on other benches, they generate an entire web of traffic. Supply requests, weather checks, routine reports, gripes about food, coded calls to imaginary. Headquarters, they don't send gibberish. Every word is scripted. Months of work have gone into building the pattern of radio life for this fictional army group. Which units talk to which, at what times, with what level of discipline. If a German traffic analyst lays these logs over what a real army should look like, it has to match. Harris glances at the small clock nailed to the wall, almost midnight. They have schedules to keep. The lifeblood of their imaginary army must pulse with the same rhythm, night after night, or someone on the other side might notice. Collins steps into the hut, the smell of damp earth and overheated vacuum tubes wrapping around him. He listens for a moment, the crisp snap of Morse, the low murmur of voice circuits being tested. How's our division tonight, he asks. Harris lifts one ear cup. Complaining about rations, sir, like always, good, means they are alive, alive in the mind of the enemy, that's all that counts. He walks to the back wall, where a huge, hand-drawn chart hangs. It lists every notional unit in the First U. Army group, divisions, regiments, engineer battalions. Beside each one, an operator's name and a set of rules about how often that unit speaks and on what nets. The 20, Thrir Da, doesn't just imitate radios, they imitate people. Somewhere out there in the German listening service, someone will be counting call signs, building his own map of Allied strength based on the ghosts in the ether. Colin's job is to feed that man the right ghosts. On the other side of the channel, Klur's duty officer brings in the latest Dienst summary. Fresh intercepts, sir. Heavy traffic continues in the Dover area. References to bridging equipment and engineer stores. Some communications indicate units being relieved but remaining in general. Sector remaining, not leaving for another front. Klur reads quickly, making notes in the margin. He knows the limits of signals intelligence. You can spoof nets, you can jam, you can stay silent. But you cannot move major formations without leaving some trace. New circuits, changed call signs, increased traffic on rail lines, chaotic logistics messages. According to the picture on his desk, a strong American formation is settled opposite Pas de Calais, digging in for a massive operation, but it is not yet moving. So what, then, are the reports out of Normandy? Increased patrol activity along the Cotentin, more reconnaissance flights over Bayeux and Keene, unusual traffic in Portsmouth and further west. A feint, a diversion, he turns to the wall, where two large boards list the commanders and estimated compositions of Allied armies in Britain. First U.S. Army, Second British Army, a Canadian Army, and then the big one, First U.S. Army Group, supposedly under the flamboyant General George Patton, the man the Germans most fear as a spearhead commander. Patton's last known appearances, from neutral press reports and German contacts, place him frequently in the southeast. Near Dover, FUSAG is the main threat. Klur says aloud, almost as if convincing himself. Normandy may be a demonstration. He draws a circle in pencil around the Pas de Calais on his coastal map, then, smaller, around the beaches near Keene. Primary axis, secondary axis. His hand lingers a moment between them. In London, in a cramped office under Whitehall, a brightish colonel with tired eyes reads a different set of reports. Colonel John Harwood, a staff officer in the London Controlling Section, scans the summary of German reactions gathered from ultra-decrypts. Wilkes is the nerve center of the Allied deception effort. Operation Fortitude South is great phantom army in Kent. The planted stories through double agents, the fake orders and exercise, all of it flows into and out of this cramped space. He reads that the German 15th Army has been reinforced, panzer divisions positioned in reserve near Calais, new anti-invasion obstacles and minefields being laid along that coast. He reads that the German leadership continues to believe that the main Allied attack will come at or near Pas de Calais, and that any landing elsewhere is likely to be a feint. He lets out a slow breath. The picture is holding, but the clock is merciless. The real invasion operation overlord cannot wait forever. Whether windows are narrow, the longer they delay, the more chance the Germans have to spot something that doesn't fit. Any sign they've detected anomalies in the FUSAG traffic, he asks his liaison from the signal deception units. None so far, sir, the liaison replies. Traffic analysis suggests they've fully accepted 3 separate armies in the southeast. Our double agents report Berlin is entirely focused on Pas de Calais. Harwood nods. Then we keep the pressure on Dover, he says, until the last possible minute. On the bluff above Dover, the darkness has changed. Where there were empty fields, now there are rows of tank silhouettes, half seen in the starlight. Canvas shapes crouch along hedgerows like trucks in logger. Tents have bloomed in orderly disorder. A low murmur of machinery rides the air, coming from speakers hidden in ditches and under tarps. Standing there, feeling the ground vibrate very faintly to the recorded rumble of engines, Collins can almost fool himself. If he squints, if he lets the pattern wash over him, it's easy to believe this hill hides a real army preparing to move. But he knows the constraints of his own illusion. By day, everything has to look convincing from altitude if the weather clears enough for a German reconnaissance plane to poke its nose across the channel. So the inflatables are painted in sun-faded greens and browns, the tent lines carefully irregular, the camp's trash pits seeded with the right kind of rubbish. By night, everything has to sound right but not too right. Locals in nearby towns, speaking French in pubs or shops, have to repeat the right bits of overheard gossip about tough American sergeants, about badges and shoulder patches from divisions that aren't really here. Yet nothing can be so thorough, so polished, that it draws attention to itself. A real army is messy. The ghost army has to impersonate that mess. Collins checks his watch. Another team is even now laying down fake divisional insignia on vehicles, sewing patches onto uniforms that will only be seen by a handful of French civilians and, through them, by German ears. Sir, a young lieutenant jogs up. We've got a timing issue on the rail movements. London wants our supply trains in the Dover area to be echoed in the timetables. Collins grimaces. Railways, they can make radios talk. Tanks appear where there are none. Sounds of convoys roll across empty fields. But they can't control every train schedule in Britain. Fortitude depends on more than just the 20, Threerd. Other branches are feeding the story. Fake orders to port authorities, staged photographs, planted mentions in diplomatic chatter. If one part is out of sync, some sharp German staff officer like Köhler might notice. Well, adjust the radio traffic, Collins says. Make it clear some of our convoys are delayed. Blame fuel, blame the British. The lieutenant nods, already mentally rewriting scripts. Friendly friction, Collins thinks. Even within this deception, they are shoving pieces around at the last minute, making sure the lie flexes instead of breaks. He wonders briefly about the men who will sail in the real convoys, toward real gunfire. Men who know that somewhere in the dark above Dover, artists and soundmen are buying them a better chance with rubber, canvas, and stagecraft. Across the channel, dawn begins to pale the horizon over France. At a radar station near Calais, a Freya operator rubs sleep from his eyes as the green trace sweeps around his scope. A faint picket fence of returns glows where the English coast should be. Nothing unusual, no dense clusters of ships, no massing armada. If there is an army preparing to come across from Dover, it is still in its cages, still loading, still hidden inside ports he cannot see. He notes a few echoes that flicker and vanish, possibly patrol boats, possibly illusions generated by atmospheric conditions. Allied jamming sometimes makes phantoms dance across his screen. He files them as likely interference and logs the shift change. In 15th Army Ek, Köhler sips weak coffee and watches the morning briefing unfold. Reports from along the coast, from the 7th Army sector in Normandy, from Naval Command, from Luftflotte 3. Increased Allied air reconnaissance over the Cotentin, Herr Oberstleutnant, one briefer says. More fighter-bomber sweeps, some shipping activity in ports further west, but hard to quantify under jamming. Any change in signals picture, Köhler asks. Negative, heavy American traffic concentrated in southeast England persists. Patton's supposed headquarters still assessed near Dover. No indication of larger-scale radio silence or major redeployments. A picture slowly congeals. The Allies are active all along the coast, probing, feinting, testing the German defenses. But the heavy hammer, the big army group, still sits across from Pas de Calais. After the briefing, one of Köhler's junior officers approaches him in the corridor. Sir, if I may, some of the reports from Normandy are troubling. Increased beach obstacles being reported by our own units need reinforcement. If the enemy strikes there, 7th Army, if... Köhler cuts in, yes, sir, but if they do, they may achieve surprise. They could secure a lodgment before 15th Army can intervene. It's a professional concern, one Köhler shares at some level, but he also knows the constraints he's under. He cannot order divisions to move. He cannot overturn Hitler's conviction that Pas de Calais is the decisive sector. His job is to rid the evidence and advise, not to rewrite the Freya's assumptions. We will recommend that 7th Army remain on alert, he says carefully. But we must not dilute our strength at Calais based on ambiguous signs. The enemy knows our thinking. They will try to deceive us. He looks the officer in the eye. Our task is to know when we are being deceived. The irony does not yet register. Back in Dover, late afternoon, sun filters through a haze over the channel, turning the sea to dull pewter. A lone girl on a bicycle pauses on a country lane, standing on the pedals, and peers across a hedge at the fields beyond. Tanks, rows and rows of them, big American machines, their white stars standing out against the drab paint. She hears engines somewhere, faint but constant, sees dust hanging over the fields as trucks reel once scrawl along rutted tracks. Later in town, she will repeat what she's seen to a friend. There are so many Americans inland now. So many vehicles, they say Patton is here himself. Her friend has a cousin in France. Her friend is careful. But the rumor passes as rumors do, threading its way via human mouths and cautious letters, toward ears that compile such things. Another piece of the picture dropped into the German mosaic. Collins does know the girl exists. He doesn't need to. His orders are simple. Keep the army alive, keep it noisy, keep it plausible. Night falls again. In the radio hut, Harris swallows another mouthful of cold coffee and leans into his key. His fist sends out another complaint about rations, another movement order, another status report from a ghost unit. In 15th Army Ek, Kleur frowns over a new set of intercepts. They confirm what he hopes to see and fears to trust. The enemy's largest formation, the mythical FUSAG, is still anchored opposite Calais. Orders instructing some divisions to move closer to embarkation, various embarkation areas that, on his map, are all in the Dover, Folkestone belt. If a great blow is coming, it is aimed straight at him. He circles another date on his calendar, early June. Soon, something will happen, somewhere along that gray strip of coast. The question, the one that will decide thousands of lives, is whether the tanks outside Dover are real. To Kleur, they exist as call signs and reports and the weight of Hitler's conviction. To Collins, they exist as rubber skins filled with air on damp English soil. Somewhere between those two realities, the outcome of the coming battle is already starting to tilt. In the first days of June, the weather turns bad. Wind claws at the channel, flinging whitecaps against the English coast. Low cloud rolls in, thick and sullen, smothering visibility. Along the south coast ports, real invasion convoys sit restless, their departure delayed. On the ridge above Dover, the fake army waits too. Captain David Collins stands in a drizzle, water beating on the rubber flank of a Sherman that weighs almost nothing. Around him, the field is a frozen scene. Tanks in logger, trucks in rows, tents sagging under the damp. To anyone watching from the far side of the channel, it must look like a force paused on the edge of a great undertaking. But the pause can't last forever. Enocha's been told, in the oblique language of staff briefings, that the real invasion has already slipped once because of the weather. The timing window is narrow, tidal conditions, moonlight, cloud cover, everything has to line up, every delay is dangerous. If the Germans put the pieces together before the first real landing craft touch French sand, if they realize that the army opposite Calais is Holothier reserves may start to shift west. Sir, the young lieutenant from Signals arrives, cap pulled low against the rain. London wants confirmation. We maintain full FUSAG traffic as scheduled. No change. Even if the weather scrubs their sailing again, Collins asks. Especially then, sir. We've been told their listening posts mustn't detect any slackening. FUSAG holds. FUSAG threatens Calais. That's the line. Collins nods. No way back, then. They've painted themselves into a corner with their own success. The more convincingly they've built this phantom, the more they must keep feeding it. He looks out across the gray water. Somewhere out there, the real assault fleets are lashed into harbor, decks slick with rain. Soldiers below decks trying to sleep with their gear on. If those men have to wait one more day, he does too. He turns his collar up and heads back toward the radio hut. Across the channel, the same low cloud that blankets Dover also smears the French sky. At a Luftwaffe airfield inland, fighter pilots play cards and smoke, grounded by the weather. Reconnaissance crews sit on their kit, frustrated. Without clear skies, they can't risk deep penetrations across to England. The RAF is too strong, Allied radar coverage too dense, they have to pick their moments. And this is not one. So, once again, Oberstleutnant Franz Köhler's view of the enemy depends on reports he cannot personally verify. He sits in his office at 15th Army Egg, listening to the rain rattle on the windows while a signals officer briefs him. Traffic patterns unchanged, sir. Heavy American presence in sector opposite Calais. We see logistics nets operating normally. No sign of larger-scale redeployment. routine rotation messages, some units taking on additional bridging and engineer stores. Any evidence of an operation elsewhere? Köhler asks. Normandy, the Cotentin. Only what we've already seen, the officer says. Increased air activity, some shipping in the Western Channel, but nowhere near the scale you would expect for a main invasion. And their radio picture west of Portsmouth remains consistent with local garrisons and training units. Köhler drums his fingers on the edge of his desk. Unable to fly, unable to see beyond the radar horizon, he has to trust the pattern of transmissions and the judgments of his intelligence staff. The pattern says Dover, the assumptions from above say Calais. He feels the shape of the decision pressing in. If the Allies have any sense, they are watching the same weather, looking for the same narrow window. When it clears, they will move. The question is, where? In London, underground, Colonel John Harwood stands in front of a wall map pocked with colored pins and threads. Red pins for German units, blue pins for Allied, white pins for fortifications that don't actually exist. The weather reports are bad. The naval staff is grumbling. But the invasion schedule, as far as he knows, is still only flexible within a small band of days. Fortitude is holding. His deception liaison tells him. Our double agents report the Germans remain convinced of a blow at Calais. Hitler personally has stated several times that any landing in Normandy will be a diversion. Harwood nods. That gives Eisenhower his margin, he says, but only if we keep the illusion intact after the first landings. The other man frowns. After, sir. Of course, once the first reports of Normandy come in, the Germans' natural instinct will be to reassess. If they see FUSAG begin to move off or go quiet at that moment, the game is up. They'll... No, we masked the real operation with a sham. He taps the area around Dover on the map. No, FUSAG must remain poised here. Radios loud, tanks visible. We must convince them a second, even larger blow is imminent at Pas de Calais. His eyes flick to the calendar. It's a tightrope. Before the landings, the Ghost Army has to be big enough, noisy enough, convincing enough to fix enemy attention. After the landings, it has to be stubborn enough to keep their best divisions pinned in place. But it can never become so omnipotent, so immovable, that its very perfection gives it away. He thinks of men like Collins up there in the wet fields of Kent, sweating over pumps and generators and paintwork. Send them our compliments, he says softly, and tell them to be ready. When this breaks, their performance will matter as much as any tank on the real beaches. On the bluff above Dover, the weather finally begins to turn. By the evening of 5 June 1944, the rain eases, the cloud ceiling lifts a little, and the wind drops. Offshore, in ports from Portsmouth to Plymouth, real destroyers and landing craft start to move. Collins watches as the sky to the south clears in ragged strips. Somewhere beyond that horizon, ships are assembling into long, dark lines, shepherded by escorts, watched by aircraft sweeping the channel routes. They are riding the edge of German radar coverage, throttled to keep wake patterns small, hidden as much by curvature and distance as by jamming. It is, in its own way, a low-level English hundreds of hulls ghosting through the night under the radar horizon, trusting to mathematics and the enemy's blindness. Sir, the liaison from London arrives by jeep, mud streaked up the sides. He carries a dispatch case under one arm. Collins leads him into the half-light of the operations tent. Around them, the sound crew is checking cables, wiping condensation off equipment, queuing up the night's engine tracks. The liaison does waste time. Overlord is on, he says quietly. They sail tonight. Landings at first light, weather permitting. Collins feels a tightness in his chest. Not fear isn't on those boats, but something close to it. A sense of watching a long-prepared machine finally start to move. What about us, he asks. You keep doing what you're doing, the liaison replies. Full pattern FUSAG remains static. If anything, increase activity over the next few days. Make it look like you're loading for your own crossing. He hesitates. There's one more thing. The Germans may get reconnaissance through gaps in the weather. If they do, they'll be looking for ports, docks, embarkation points. We want them to see tank parks still. Full staging areas crowded, not empty hard stands. Understood. Also, any failure in your sound or radio nets right now is unacceptable. The liaison adds, almost apologetically. London is very clear on that. If anything goes dark, if any part of FUSAG suddenly seems to vanish, you could undo all of it. No excuses. No slack, Collins nods. He turns to his men. This is it, he says simply. From tonight on, every hum of your generators, every key you press, every scrap of canvas you haul matters for the men who are actually going. We don't get to be brave, we get to be convincing. They go back to work. In the radio hut, Sergeant Paul Red Harris checks his watch. 2,230 hours. He adjusts his headphones and leans into his key. Net control, this is Baker 5. Report convoy load complete Dover sector, awaiting final embarkation orders. On the German side of the channel, in a low building near St. Omer, a Dienst operator scratches that message into his log. Another call sign, another piece of an invisible jigsaw. He does know that no convoy has moved in Dover, that no landing craft are actually filling in the harbor opposite Calais. He only knows that the fists on his headphones are familiar, consistent, behaving like the wireless operators of a large, well-drilled formation. At a Freya radar site near Boulogne, the night shift watches the green sweep on their scopes. A thick band of interference grows in the Western Channel. Allies are jamming again. Under the clutter, a few dim blips drift slowly, the signatures of merchant shipping or perhaps small naval units. Nothing that looks like a massive assault convoy. The radar horizon plays its quiet trick. Beyond a certain distance, surface echoes simply curve away. The huge armadas moving toward Normandy are invisible to these sets until they come much closer. And by then, if they are too far west, they'll already be outside this station's sector. The operators log what they see. No significant movement opposite past Calais, jamming toward west. Inside 15th Army Ecke, in the small hours of 6 June 1944, a duty officer bursts into Kleur's quarters. Herr Oberstleutnant reports from Normandy, airborne drops inland, gliders, some claims of paratroops near Keene and Carentan. Kleur is already awake by the time the words register fully. He hadn't slept much anyway. He pulls on his tunic, follows the man down to the operations room. Radios chatter in clipped German. Staff officers cluster around a central table, listening as fragmented reports pour in from 7th Army units along the western coast. He listens to one voice on the speaker. Enemy paratroopers landing in significant numbers, some bridges attacked, request permission to counterattack with local reserves. The duty general from 7th Army sounds calm, but there's tension underneath. Kleur looks at the overlay map. The Cotentin Peninsula, Keene, the Orne River, all of it west of his main sector. Is this it? Someone asks. Have they started, or is it a raid? Another staffer counters. They've practiced this before. Small drops, commando strikes, they wait for more. Around 400, word comes that shipsman-y shipshave been spotted off the Normandy beaches. Now there is no doubt. The invasion has begun, but in Berlin, in the Wolfschanz, Hitler is woken late. And when the news reaches him, he frames it in the cage of his own expectations. Normandy, he insists, is a diversion, a feint. The main blow will still come at Past, Calais, under the guns of the 15th Army, where the channel is narrow. Until that main blow develops, the armored divisions held in strategic reserve near Calais are not to be released. This order travels down the command chain like a steel rod. At 15th Army Ecke, it arrives as a simple directive. Maintain readiness, do not redeploy. Prepare to repel the principal landing when it comes in your sector. Kleur absorbs it slowly. So Weste, the junior officer from days ago, says quietly. Even with this, he gestures at the Normandy report. Yes, Kleur answers, we stay. He does say what he's thinking, that this would be the perfect moment for the Phantom to be exposed. If FUSAG were not real, if it were some elaborate rusette, it is when the Allies would be tempted to shift it toward Normandy, to throw everything at the actual landings. He calls for the latest Dienst summary. The signals officer brings it, eyes scanning his face for a hint of the stakes. Sir, there is no sign of larger-scale movement in the Dover sector. He reports. Fusagese traffic remains high. Some nets even indicate units continuing to load equipment. No radio silence, no cutoff of civilian lines near the ports opposite Calais. Kleur closes his eyes for a moment. The invisible army at Dover is still there. If he doubts it now, he is doubting not just the signals, but the Führer's judgment, the entire structure of expectation that has been built over months. Very well, he says at last, we maintain posture, but keep watching Normandy. If the enemy builds up significantly, we must be ready with proposals. He is caught in a narrowing corridor. If the Normandy landings are a feint, his caution will be rewarded. If they are not, his inaction will help doom 7th Army. On the Dover Ridge, as the gray light of dawn 6 June 1944 creeps across the fields, Collins hears the first distant rumble of real war. It's not much at this distance, a faint, continuous thudding on the far edge of hearing, but he recognizes it from training films and from veterans' descriptions. Naval gunfire, a slow roll of thunder layered over the earth. One of the sound guys steps out of the truck, looks south, listens. Is that them? He asks quietly. I think so, Collins says. Without fanfare, without ceremony, somewhere far to his right on a map, men are stepping off landing craft into surf laced with barbed wire and mines. He cannot help them directly. What he can do is keep their enemies guessing. He walks into the sound truck. Playlists? He asks. Loaded, sir, the lead engineer says. We've got vehicle warm-up, tank movements, track clatter. Can project across 2 miles easy with a wind like this. Good, start cycling through, make it sound like we're staging columns for a move, mix in brake squeals, shouted orders, no gunfire, we're not attacking yet, they throw the switches. From hidden speakers along the hedgerows, a mechanical symphony rises. The cough and roar of engines, the metallic rattle of tracks, shouted American voices calling to each other. It rides on the damp air, drifts out over fields and lanes, wraps around the empty rubber tanks. If anyone on the French side has a directional microphone pointed this way, if any German listening post warily tries to sort real from fake by ear alone, they will hear an army making ready. Harris radio key ticks without pause. This is Dog 6, report assembly complete. Awaiting hour for crossing. This is Cornet. All units confirm embarkation status by 900. Repeat, 900. The logs on the German side fill with these ghosts. Embarkation orders, readiness reports, rumors of movement. In Dienst, traffic analysts run their pencils over graph paper, plotting call sign activity over time. FUSAG's signature remains strong, regular, appropriate to a force that, in theory, is waiting its own signal to go. No sudden lulls, no great betraying silence. In the first hours after the Normandy landings, German radar and coastal observers in the past, Calais sector report nothing unusual. A few distant ship echoes, routine patrols, no armada churning directly toward them. Claire stands in the plotting room and feels the dissonance grow. On one board, Normandy erupts in reports. Ships, shellfire, aircraft, paratroops, frantic requests from frontline units for armored support. On another, opposite Calais, the picture is eerily calm like a coiled spring. 15th Army remains under your command, his superior tells him. Our mission is unchanged. Until we are certain Normandy is not a feint, we do not weaken our main sector. Behind those words sits the shadow of Hitler himself. Claire knows what certain means in this context. Not just heavy shipping off Normandy, not just landings. It means the conviction that the enemy has expended his main effort there and has nothing left for Calais. And as long as Patton's ghostly army remains on the Channel shore opposite him, noisy and solid in the ether, that conviction is hard to form. Back in Kent, under a sky thick with low cloud and the distant flashes of real war beyond the horizon, Collins hits his first serious snag. Mid-afternoon on today, as his men rotate through maintenance, one of the big generators coughs, stutters, and dies. The steady background rumble of its engines winds down into silence. At first, no one says anything. Then one of the techs swears, "That's our east block," he says. Half the speakers on that side just went dead. Collins imagines a circle on the map shrinking. A segment of his fake army falling suddenly quiet. How long to fix, he asks. Hours if it's the alternator, maybe more if we need parts. He feels the timing like a physical pressure. Right now, in some German bunker, men are trying to decide if what's happening in Normandy is the main show. Right now, the more FUSAG looks rattled or diminished, the more those men may tilt toward shifting forces west. What if we reroute from the West Bloc? Someone suggests, shorten the footprint, but keep it loud. Collins forces himself to think it through. If he aggregates too much of his projected sound into a smaller area, any careful German analyst with ears or even basic mapping might notice that one chunk of the army has gone quiet while another has gotten suspiciously noisy. No, it has to look from a distance disordered in the right way. Units might go quiet briefly for maintenance, but not whole sectors at once, and not for long. He makes a decision. Strip every non-essential load off that generator, he orders. Kill lighting ancillary gear, prioritize the speakers. If we can get even a partial whisper out of that side, it's better than a dead zone. Do whatever you have to do, they scramble. Cables are rerouted, circuits bridged in ways that would make an electrician wince. Within an hour, the damaged generator limps back to life at half output. The sound footprint isn't perfect, but it's there, faint, flickering, suggestive. Enough, he hopes, that it will blend into the normal noise of a big, messy camp where some engines die, some men shout. Some zones are more active than others. Small failures are acceptable. A total blackout would not be. In London, Harwood's team monitors incoming intelligence to see how the Germans react. Late on 6 June and into 7 June, ultra-decrypts and agent reports show a pattern emerging. German High Command acknowledges the Normandy landings as serious, but many still speak of a second, decisive landing expected near Calais. Several panzer divisions remain on stand, by near 15th Army sector uncommitted. Orders to move are drafted, then delayed, then countermanded. Fortitude is doing its work. At 15th Army, the tension becomes its own kind of weapon. Reports from the Normandy front grow more urgent. British and American forces are pushing inland. The beaches, once tenuous, hard-won strips of sand under fire, are slowly turning into real lodgements. Köhler reads a situation report from 7th Army describing the chaos. Communications shattered by air attacks, reserves struggling to move under strafing, bridges blown, armored units delayed or cut off. He feels each line like a weight added to a scale. Yet when he requests permission to release one of his panzer divisions southward, the answer comes back the same. Hold, await clearer picture. Main threat still assessed in your sector. That assessment rests on a few key pillars: Hitler's conviction, the logic of geography, and the intangible, persistent presence of FUSAG at Dover. If any one of those crumbles, the whole thing could tip, but FUSAG does not crumble. In the days after today, while the real armies bleed and grind in the hedgerows of Normandy, Collins' ghost army keeps on breathing. More inflatables go up, new battery positions appear, fake command posts sprout radio masts, painted signs point to non-existent unit motor pools. In nearby villages, soldiers with specially stitched patches drink beer and complain loudly, within earshot of anyone inclined to gossip about being held back, while others get all the glory. We're stuck here in Dover while they go in over there. One American drawls theatrically in a pub, knowing the French owner's cousin has a line, however tenuous, into occupied territory. I heard we go next week, another says. Patton's not going to sit this out. These small performances send ripples outward. Across the channel, Köhler receives new human intelligence reports via Berlin. Neutral diplomats and German sympathizers in Britain speak of a huge concentration of armor and troops in Kent, still waiting to move, and Patton furious at not being allowed to lead the first wave. He lays those alongside the signal intercepts and the absence of any sign that Dover's ports have emptied. Piece by piece, the picture reinforces itself. Normandy, he concludes reluctantly, could be a main effort. But Calais still threatens. The possibility of a second, crushing blow in his sector cannot be dismissed. And so the steel, the fuel, the men that might have tried to throw the Allies back into the sea in the week after today remain locked in place. Friendly friction begins to gnaw at the German side. In Normandy, field commanders demand armor. Ob West urges flexibility. Romelwin, he is present and not away in Germania, argues that the crisis is now. Central Command hesitates, divided between Hitler's orders and the evident reality. At 15th Army, some staff officers grumble that they are being sidelined. forced to watch history being made a few hundred kilometers away while they sit on tanks that rust under camouflage nets. "We could be the difference," one colonel mutters in the mess. "A thrust south, hit their flank, drive them into the sea. Instead we wait." Köhler doesn't answer. He knows that if they move and Calais is struck, they will be blamed for leaving their post. If they don't move and Normandy stands, they will be blamed for their inaction. He looks again at the latest Dienst charts. FUSAG still hums. In Kent, the weather clears enough one morning for a Luftwaffe reconnaissance plane to attempt a daring dash across the channel. It skims wave tops, climbing only briefly to snap blurred photographs before diving back into the deck and racing for home under Allied radar and fighter cover. Back in France, technicians develop the film. The prints show cliffs, fields, the sprawl of Dover's outskirts. And despite the Allies' best camouflage, a scattering of shapes inland that look, through a long lens like tanks, trucks, and artillery. No one can tell from black and white photographs that some of those tanks are only rubber and air. The tones are right. The shadows fall in the right places. The whole pattern reads Army. The reconnaissance report notes substantial armored and support concentrations in the Dover area. Another peg in the board. Collins never sees those photos. He only hears secondhand that German planes have been more cautious, that Allied air defenses are tight. He keeps walking the lines of his fake camps, checking on his men, correcting details. One afternoon, he finds a row of dummy trucks parked too neatly, wheel tracks giving away a pattern too perfect to be real. He calls the sergeant over. "Break this up," he orders. "Leave some gaps. Look at our own motor pools. No ones that tidy. We're not building a parade ground, we're building a mess the enemy believes in." The sergeant grins ruefully. "Artists," he says, "we're all too tempted to make it pretty." "Ugly wins the war," Collins says. Day by day, as June stretches on, the Ghost Army and the real armies perform their parallel dances. In Normandy, the Allies push inland slowly, trapped at first in the hedgerows, paying dearly for every kilometer. In the past, Calais' 15th Army remains on alert, rehearsing, fortifying, waiting for a storm that never breaks over them. Operation Fortitude is reaching its critical final run phase. If the Germans are going to reclassify Calais from primary threat to secondary and start pulling serious forces south, it will be now, as the scale of Allied buildup in Normandy becomes undeniable. Harwood's team in London watches for any sign of this. When Ultra shows that Hitler has again issued orders to hold substantial forces in the 15th Army sector, even weeks after D-Day, Harwood allows himself only the rarest flicker of satisfaction. "They are still buying it," he says, but he doesn't let his guard drop. "Keep FUSAG alive," he orders. "We'll stage a slow build-up toward embarkation in our signals over the next few weeks, then a gradual winding down as if units are being rotated elsewhere, but not yet. Not while Calais still pins their armor. For Collins and Harris, it means more of the same, but with subtler shading. Radio traffic shifts from pure preparation to the kind of grumbling and administrative hum that indicates long-term occupation. Convoy schedule revised again, repeat revised, new date to bridging company complains of idle time, equipment maintenance issues. No one on the German side hears a trumpet call announcing that this was all a lie. They just hear an army group stuck in limbo, still present, still dangerous, still enough of a potential threat that prudence demands keeping strong forces watching it. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic in the way of charging men and blazing guns, but in the quiet, in the ether, it is as decisive as any attack run over a warship. As June turns toward Julie, the cumulative effect of thousands of small deceptions, of inflatable tanks and fake radio nets and staged gossip, becomes clear in one brutal, simple fact. German armored divisions that might have slammed into the side of the Normandy lodgment in its most fragile days are still sitting, engines cold, behind the past, Calais. By the time some of them begin to shift south, the lodgment is no longer fragile. It's a beachhead with depth, with ports coming online, with airfields established, with a river of men and material flowing into France. The window where a fast, hard counterblow might have changed everything is closing. On both sides of the channel, men who will never meet are unknowingly finishing their parts in this strange, asymmetric battle. Collins walks past a tank made of rubber that gleams dully in the evening light, and thinks of real tanks carving through bocage. Köhler reads yet another report that warns of a probable second invasion attempt near Calais, and feels the vise of his orders hold him still. The Ghost Army has almost completed its run. In late June 1944, the maps on both sides of the Channel begin to change shape. In Normandy, little blue pins inch inland from the beaches, forming a ragged crescent along rivers and hedgerows. In the past, Calais, on Oberstleutnant Franz Köhler's wall, red pins barely move at all. 15th Army still sits where it sat on 5 Junintect, fully manned, watching the Dover, Calais Narrows. The ghost opposite them has not blinked. In London Underground, Colonel John Harwood studies a fresh intelligence summary by the light of a shaded lamp. German 15th Army remains in place. His liaison reads, Hitler continues to believe that the major Allied blow will fall at or near past Calais. Normandy landing still described in some high-level signals as a prelude or diversionary effort. Harwood lets out a slow breath. Weeks. The real fighting in Normandy has been raging for weeks. Allied casualties mounting. Men dying in orchards in sunken lanes, in fields walled with hedges and stone. Yet here in the German mind, there is still room for a bigger hammer to fall. That bigger hammer is a fiction of about 30,000 men on paper, First U.S. Army group anchored in Kent and Sussex. A formation that, in reality, is made of rubber, radio waves, and the imaginations of the 3rd Headquarters Special Troops and other deception units. Can we sustain fortitude at this tempo through Julie, he asks. The liaison nods cautiously. Yes, sir, our double agents can continue to report on FUSAG preparations. Signal units say the pattern is stable, but the field boys in Kent. He hesitates, they are feeling the strain. Equipment, generators, personnel. They weren't built to run a phantom army forever. Harwood thinks about Collins and his men, though he's never met them. Men out in the English weather, inflating and deflating tanks, stringing cables, scripting radio life for units that don't exist. There's one more push, Harwood says. A final run. The Germans are at their decision point. Normandy is growing. If we can keep 15th Army locked down through the next few weeks, through their last realistic chance to counterattack, in strength we'll have done what we came to do. He taps a finger on Dover. Tell them no slackening, not yet. We'll begin to phase down only when intelligence shows Calais truly downgraded as a threat in German eyes. On the ridge above Dover, early July sun bakes the fields dry. The rubber skins of the fake Shermans feel warm under Collins' hand as he walks the line. The camp has evolved. What began as a hasty conjuring before D-Day is now a fully lived, in illusion. Laundry lines between tents, oil drums stacked in what look like fuel dumps, piles of empty crates marked with unit codes that don't match any real formation. On the air, Harris and the other operators have shifted tone. Less urgent embarkation chatter now, more the grinding routines of a big unit waiting for orders that keep slipping into the future. Corps, this is Able 9. Request clarification on revised hour, Harris taps, his fist steady, men restless, rumors spreading. In the French countryside across the water, German analysts read those rumors as confirmation. The big blow is still coming. Inside 15th Army, the atmosphere is growing brittle. Köhler stands at the plotting table watching Normandy swell with Allied strength. Reports show more divisions coming ashore, more artillery, more armor, airfields sprouting behind the lines. The beaches, once precarious, now bristling with anti-aircraft guns and supply dumps. On another board, an orderly has chalked the names of the panzer divisions, still nominally under 15th Army's influence. Sharp, dangerous names, units that, on paper, could make any Allied commander think twice if they appeared on his flank. They are all still here. He has read the complaints from Normandy, field commanders begging for armor. He's seen the notes from Ob West, the hints that perhaps at last some of 15th Army's strength should be released. And he has watched those hints run headin' into Hitler's insistence that Calais remains the real danger. FUSAG's traffic still strong. He asks his signals officer. Yes, Herr Oberstleutnant, no sign of dispersal. They continue to reference crossing plans toward midsummer. Estimates suggest at least 30,000 men in that army group, perhaps more, including attached units. 30,000. The number hangs between them, enough to open another front. Enough to require every panzer he holds if they do come. Köhler's jaw tightens. If we strip Calais and they land here, he says quietly, we will be accused of treason. If we don't strip Calais and they win there, he doesn't finish. The enemy has presented him with a dilemma that has no clean solution. He thinks, not for the first time, that this is what genius in war can look like. Not only massing steel and men where you strike, but conjuring phantoms where you do not. On the bluff, Collins receives the final run orders via courier. Fortitude South is to be sustained at full intensity through July. Scripts are included, fake high-level conferences, coded references to 40 crossings, and second-phase landings in the Calais sector. The idea is to suggest that FUSAG, far from being an exhausted or abandoned project, is still winding up for its own blow. He spreads the documents on a trestle table in the operations tent. His officers gather around. All right, he says. For the next few weeks, we're not just a threat, we're a promise. London wants the Germans to believe that once Normandy settles, we are coming straight across at Pas de Calais. One lieutenant points out a line in the script. Ensure consistent activity approximating a full army group of 30,000 men, he reads. Sir, that's a lot of noise for a unit of our size. Collins nods. We can't be everywhere all the time, he says. But they don't need detail, they need pattern. Harris, you'll rotate call signs to suggest depth. Sound teams, you'll keep moving your loudspeakers. Don't let any one direction be quiet for long. He looks around. This is the hard part. Not the climax, not the opening night. This is the long middle act where you keep the audience believing even when their attention wants to drift. He doesn't say what sits under those words. If they falter now, if German analysts detect a hollowness in the geese life, just as their own field commanders are insisting Normandy is the real thing, the balance could shift. Panzer divisions could be released earlier. History might bend. His men nod. They go back to work. Days pass. The sound of real war in Normandy doesn't carry this far, but its echoes do. Casualty lists, sketchy communicus on bulletins, snatches of conversation from officers passing through who've seen the front. In the radio hut, Harris and his fellow operators sit through endless shifts, living as the voices of units that will never march, never bivouac, never bleed. Command, this is Echo 3. Men asking when they'll see action, request clarification, morale slipping. He knows as he sends it that somewhere a German analyst will underline that line and nod. Restless troops sound real. Across the channel in Dienst, that's exactly what happens. More indications FUSAG is fully manned, still awaiting commitment. A traffic analyst notes in his neat script, pattern consistent with a large formation held in reserve for a decisive blow. He does not know that he's being played by actors hell never meet. He only knows that the symphony of dots and dashes in his headphones paints a picture his superiors already believe. Inside 15th Army, heat gathers under the roof tiles. Julie presses down on everyone. Normandy explodes. Late in the month, reports pour in of a concentrated Allied offensive west of Sainal. Heavy bombing has turned German positions to dust. American units are punching through, breaking out into open country. Once they are among the hedges no longer, their superiority in numbers and mobility begins to tell. The maps on Köhler's wall change faster now. Red frontline markers bend, buckle, start to peel back under the pressure of arrows drawn in blue. At a hastily convened conference, Higher Command finally gives in to operational reality. Select panzer divisions from the 15th Army sector are authorized to move south. The order reaches Köhler's office late in the evening. Redeploy elements of I's Panzer Corps toward Normandy. Priority roads. Maximum speed. He feels a flicker of vindication and dread. Signal all affected units, he orders. Emphasize speed. But he glances at the Calais sector map. We must still maintain a credible defense here. Leave enough on this coast that the enemy will not be tempted. He does not say leave enough that the Führer cannot later accuse us of abandoning Calais, but everyone in the room hears it. The move sets off its own kind of chaos. German staff officers scramble to draw routes that won't tangle with units already streaming away from Normandy. Columns of tanks and trucks grind onto French roads that are already battered, clogged, and under constant Allied air surveillance. Fighter bombers prowl, bridges are gone, fuel is low. The very act of finally committing these armored units toward the real battle becomes a gauntlet. From his desk, Köhler reads fragmentary movement reports, convoys delayed by destroyed crossings, units forced to detour. Casualty lists from air attacks. Opposite Dover, the radar plots remain thin. FUSAG, the phantom of 30,000, is still sitting on the English side of the map, loud and immobile. On the hilltop, Collins hears of the breakout in Normandy through official channels. A terse briefing, a few arrows redrawn on his wall map. No flourish, no mention of glory, but he can read between the lines. Once the Americans punch past Saintel, the geometry shifts. Once they reach Avranches and the bottleneck between Normandy and Brittany, they can spill into France's interior. For the first time, he allows himself to think, we might have done it. That night, under a sky streaked with high summer stars, his ghost army performs as it always has. Speakers pump out the grind of tracked vehicles, generators drone. Men in fake patches and tailored insignia drift through local pubs, complaining about being held back while the boys over there get all the action. Harris, on his key, sends another routine report about vehicle maintenance and fuel allocations. There is no single, cinematic moment where a switch flips and the war changes direction. Just 1,000 small decisions compounded. 1,000 illusions maintained long enough. As July fades into August, the consequences sharpen. Allied forces pour out of Normandy. A great encirclement takes shape around Falaise. German units are caught, mauled, broken. The front in France begins to collapse in places, retreat turning into rout. Only now do more of 15th Army's divisions begin to move in earnest. Some never leave Calais at all. Others start south so late that they arrive only in time to cover withdrawals, not to throw anyone back into the sea. In London, Harwood receives the analysis he's been waiting for. Ultra decrypts, prisoner interrogations, and captured documents show that throughout June and much of July, Hitler and much of Ogu continued to believe in a major threat at Pas de Calais. 15th Army was held back. Panzer divisions remained leashed. A staff report estimates that as many as 20 German divisions, several of them armored, were effectively neutralized as a result, delayed in their commitment to Normandy or kept out of it entirely. While the lodgment was most vulnerable, no one pins an exact number of lives saved on Fortitude. War doesn't break down that cleanly. But Harwood can see the shape of it. Every battalion that never reached the blockade. Every tank that stayed under camouflage nets near Calais instead of appearing on some French lane in front of an Allied column. He reaches for a pen. To the men in Kent, he writes in the careful, dry language of a senior officer, "Your operations have contributed materially to the fixation of enemy forces in the past, Calais sector during the critical phase of the Normandy lodgment. The success of Overlord owes no small part to your its effectiveness. It's a tidy sentence for a messy, sprawling act of collective imagination." On the bluff above Dover, Collins gets the message a few days later. He reads it alone for a moment, then tacks it up in the radio hut where Harris and the others can see it. No small part, Harris reads aloud, with a crooked grin. Not bad for a bunch of artists. Collins does grin. He sees in his mind the bodies on beaches he never set foot on, the casualty lists he scanned each day in the paper. The letters not sent because someone made it home instead of dying under a panzer's treads that never arrived. "We did our job," he says quietly, "same as any other unit. Soon after, the next set of orders comes. Fortitude South will be wound down, with the front now racing east across France. The plausibility of a massive fresh invasion at Calais fades. German attention is no longer anchored to this strip of coast. In the same way, their crisis is everywhere. The 23rd is to dismantle its Dover apparatus, pack its ghost army away, and prepare to deploy closer to the front for new tactical deceptions. Evacuation, for them, is not about lifeboats and rafts. It's about deflating a world. On a clear August morning, Collins walks the lines with his sergeants one last time. Men in coveralls open valves on the Sherman decoys. Air hisses out. The proud silhouettes sag, crumple, fold in on themselves. In an hour, a battalion's worth of armored force is reduced to piles of limp rubber, rolled and strapped on, to trucks. Tents come down, fake fuel dumps are broken up, camouflage nets are bundled, tracks in the dirt are left to the rain and time. Leave nothing that gives the game away, Collins instructs. If some farmer walks this field in a month, he should see nothing but grass and old ruts. If a German aerial photograph catches this area before the war ends, it should look like we were here, and then we moved same as any real outfit. The men take a quiet pride in that. Deception done right has its own discipline. As the last generators are winched onto lorries, the speakers stowed, the cables coiled, a hush settles over the ridge. For the first time in months, the hilltop sounds like what it really is, just an English field above a gray sea. Collins lingers a moment. He thinks about the first night, the rolled bundles of rubber in the grass, the sense of stepping into a role from which there would be no retake. No second showing if the audience didn't believe them. He thinks about the constraint that started it all. There would be only one today, one shot at the lodgment. Now that shot has landed. He turns and climbs into the last truck out, making sure he is, in his own small way, the last man to leave the Ghost Army's stage. Across the channel, in a France now alive with retreating German columns and advancing Allied ones, Oberstleutnant Franz Köhler watches the maps being stripped from his walls as headquarters prepares to fall back. Lines once carefully drawn are being rolled up in haste. Files are packed, some are burned. In the crush of events, in the daily fight for survival and order, the question of FUSAG fades to the background. There are more immediate fires to put out, but some weeks later, a colleague from another staff passes him a captured Allied document. A fragment only, an organizational chart, notes from London about Operation Fortitude South and FUSAG, the notional First U.S. Army Group notional. The word cuts. He realizes all at once that the army whose presence had weighed so heavily on his decisions may never have existed as anything but a structure on paper and in ether. Inflatable tanks, the other officer says bitterly, wireless games, double agents. Köhler thinks of the nights staring at his Dover, Calais sector, of the constrained choices, of the divisions held back while Normandy bled. He doesn't say anything. There is too much war left and too little appetite for dissecting old failures. But privately he knows they were hit not only by steel and fire, but by ghosts. Later still, after the guns fall silent, historians will count divisions and timetables, read diaries and intercepts, and try to draw clean lessons from the murk. They will say that Operation Fortitude North against Norway, South against Past, Calais, and the work of units like the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the so-called Ghost Army, helped hold dozens of German divisions in the wrong places at the right times. They will note that in Dover alone, a fictional army group of some 30,000 men on paper, projected with rubber and sound and radio, fixed real panzer divisions in place while other flesh and blood soldiers clawed their way ashore in Normandy. They will argue about exactly how many lives that bought, how many days it shaved off the war. Collins, if anyone asks him, won't have a number. He'll remember nights in the radio hut, the hum of generators, the smell of warm rubber and wet grass. He'll remember men like Harris, tapping out the lives of units that never were so that men in units that did exist could live a little longer. He'll remember that their weapons were pumps, brushes, microphones, and keys, and that, used well, they were as deadly in effect as some guns. In the end, the impact of the Ghost Army is not marked by craters or shattered hulls, but by absences. Tanks that never reached the front, shells that were never fired, counterattacks that never quite assembled in time. On a quiet day years later, a visitor standing on that same ridge above Dover would see only grass and sky and the endless gray ribbon of the channel. But if he listens closely, in his imagination, he might still hear it, the phantom rumble of engines, the click of a Morse key spelling out orders to 30,000 men who exist only in the enemy's mind. A ghost army on its final run, buying time and space for the real one across the water. If you've watched this far, consider this. Which mattered more in this battle of constraints of radar, distance, and politics, or the handful of people willing to turn rubber and radio static into a weapon? Let me know in the comments what moment of this story surprised you most. the inflatable tanks, the fake radio nets, or the fact that a completely fictional army could hold real panzer divisions in place. If you'd like more deep-dive battlefield stories where decisions under impossible constraints change history, hit like, subscribe, and tell me which operation, front, or unit you want to see next.